right. Welcome back to another episode of the podcast. Today, we are diving into another interesting question. Funny, they're all interesting to me. Very selfish to get the guests on that I invite onto the show. But as an introvert, I can totally relate to today's question. I'm very interested to hear what our guest has to say. So today's question is all about how we can cultivate safe group spaces where clients actually show up and feel held and seen and comfortable to connect with the other people in that group setting. And to answer the question, I've invited the amazing Ash McDonald, a therapist turned business strategist and coach who weaves psychological safety and intention into every brand touchpoint. Welcome to the show, Ash.
Yes, thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Thanks so much for joining us and sharing all your wisdom. But before we get stuck in, do you want to give us a quick rundown, in a nutshell, who you are, how you got to where you are today, and who you support?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I'm a therapist first. So I started in the therapy world. I have a master's in counseling psychology and sociology, and I opened a private practice 12 years ago and started in that area, which I loved so much. And then eventually moved into the online space, primarily because I have three children and I needed to figure out a way to continue doing what I love to do, but also be home as much as possible. And so I came into the online space back in 19, and since then have sort of morphed into this nervous system first based coaching and business strategy modality, if you will, because I could never let go of my therapy background and all that I know and all that I practice and preach. And so I work with high functioning entrepreneurs and professionals who do it all, who carry a million different roles and wear a million different hats. And I essentially say, like, do a million things with a human amount of time. And I help them to do that in a way where their capacity feels expanded and they feel like they can be present and feel nurtured in the work that they do without sacrificing everything, which so often us women have to find out the hard way.
I feel like you just described me. I'm just like, oh my God, all the hats, three kids, juggling all the things, trying
Yep.
to carry all the load and
Yeah.
trying to get better. But, as a mum of three, it's just so hard.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it
But
is.
what an advantage the online space is, isn't it? Like
It
to
is.
allow women like you and I to do what we love in a way
Totally.
that really fits into our life and supports our vision and our way of living.
Yep. Absolutely.
So, based on your therapy background, which I believe is a huge advantage in what you do, because it automatically sets you up with all the skills to support people and actually get people results. Why do you think so many group programs out there struggle to move people from, a tick in the box where people simply show up to the call because they feel like they have to actually getting something out of it, to authentically engaging not only with the coach but also the other people on that call?
I would say, in a nutshell, it has most to do with the fact that we forget in many of these spaces, while this is our business, it is the way that we create revenue, it's the way that we provide for our families. We are, most of the time, I mean, when we're hosting group spaces, right, we are doing human based work. And human based work requires a human approach. And so often, what I see and what I will teach people to do differently is to go first. Bring vulnerability to the table first. Be the person who's willing to share, not the shiny, fancy, high level, this is all the things I've perfected, but be vulnerable. Be the human in the room that acts in which ways you want your members to act. And some people think that that's a little backwards. And I think a lot of people come in and they come in the leader mentality where they've got it all figured out and everything's all shiny and perfect. And from that, humans have a human experience of, I can't relate to this person. I can't connect to this person. I'm too broken. There's something wrong with me. I can't share the good, the bad, the ugly, or maybe they only feel like they can share the good things. And I would say, both in the groups I've experienced, but definitely in the groups that I've created, the richest groups that I've had are the ones where I show up raw and real. And I sort of bring, if I'm going to ask you a vulnerable question, I'm going to share something vulnerable first. It's sort of the gift of reciprocity. And to be totally truthful with you, when I was in traditional therapy and licensed and in private practice, I felt very sort of lost in that profession for a while because there are such strong ethics and rules and guidelines around what you can and cannot say inside of a session. And I remember so vividly years ago, I had a client sit across from me and share that she was going through a miscarriage. And at the time, I had had 3 miscarriages myself, and I could so deeply relate to her feelings. And as a therapist, I could not say a thing about it. And that was one of those moments where I realized, like, this is not for me, because I know that the most valuable, most beautiful, most authentic thing that I could bring to this table that's going to bring this person the most healing is to share my pain. And so I bring that to every space that I create. And from that, um, I mean, the kind of containers that I've been able to create have been truly, truly rich in the relationships, in the give and take, and the reciprocity. And I think that's what makes a big difference.
That is such a refreshing take on coaching. We're all told to show up polished and perfect. And that seems to be the
Yeah.
way you need to show up in your marketing and in the way you sell.
Hmm.
And otherwise, you aren't the authority to talk about what you're talking about. So I love how you're
Totally.
flipping that on its head, because we all started somewhere and we're all
Yeah.
far from perfect, even as a
Yes.
business coach, even if you've made it to here, like share the ups and downs. So I just love
Yes.
how you're setting the example and allowing your own journey and your own, in
Yeah.
inverted commas, failures, which aren't
Yeah.
obviously failures, to
Right.
help people to open up and connect.
Yeah, I'd say that's in more than just even group spaces too. I mean, some of my highest paying pay in full clients have come from binging my podcast and it saying like, "Oh, it was these vulnerable conversations or these things that you shared. I never heard anybody share such vulnerability and the things that they're talking about." And I've had people who hired me because my podcast is with a set of headphones while I walk on the street with background noise, because if I was going to be able to do it, it had to be realistic to the life that I was living and the 3 children that I had and the nomadic lifestyle that we were living. And so I think it's a part of everything. Like the more you can show up more truly you and more authentically you. And that's such a corny thing to say. So I hate even saying that because I feel like you read it in every book, be authentically you. But what I'm meaning is like the unpolished version of you. That's the version where somebody on the other side of the screen goes, me too. I feel that. I'm connected to that. That's how you get the clients. That's how you create the container where people feel like they're like, "Oh my gosh, I'm in the richest place I've ever been. Like I have built community here." I'd say the most successful my business has ever been is when I am being unpolished.
It's consistent as well. It means you can
Yes,
carry on what you're
totally.
doing in your marketing in your group
Yeah.
space as well. I feel like we're being taught so many times to just filter and polish.
Hmm. Yep.
It's so much easier to have this consistent flow, a consistent experience where people know
Totally.
what to expect and they resonate with what they're getting inside your group program. Such a smart way. So, are you really recording a podcast on the go? I'm like, this is
Yes.
so cool. I
So it's
need
on.
to tune in now.
Right. I'm on a little bit of a break. We actually come back in August, which is really
Yeah.
exciting. Yeah, if you tune into the episodes that I had before this little break, it was literally you could hear horns honking, and I'd have to stop, like, hold on, an ambulance is going by, and I really specifically did not edit these things out, and I cannot tell you how much more engagement I got on my podcast after doing that from people who are like, you made me realize that I don't have to wait for things to be perfect to take action on my dreams. Or you like having this, listening to your podcast feels like I'm on a walk with you. It's not this.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
even
yeah.
now that I've heard that so many times, I kind of feel that too. Like, I don't want to listen to podcasts that sound perfect. I want to Voxer with a friend. I want to have a wildly raw conversation with somebody that I can relate to. And so that's what I try to do with my business.
Yeah, so cool. And again, consistent. I just
Yeah,
buzzword of the episode.
sure, sure.
Consistently approachable and
Yeah.
raw.
Yeah.
Let's have a look. So, next up, I know you're big on preserving your energy, your time, not trying to do the impossible. I
Mhm.
feel like as coaches, as group program facilitators, we so often feel like we have to be online and they're supporting our students, our clients 24/7.
Totally.
So, how have you shaped support in your program so it doesn't feel like it's burning you out and
Yeah.
taking all your energy while still elevating that client experience?
Totally. With everything that I do, I start with open communication. And with that specifically, I always make sure that everybody is aware on multiple bases what my boundaries are for the space. And I do this in a way and I verbalize it in a way that says, this is how I know that I can show up the best for you, what you can expect from me. And also, I'm always particular to say, you come however you are. If you need to message me, and maybe not everybody agrees with this, but I do. If you need to message me at 2 a.m. or on a Saturday or these days, you do that because you're not responsible for my boundaries. I am. And I don't have notifications for any of my apps. So you won't disturb me. I will come in on these days at this time. You can expect this, and this is what you cannot expect, right? So for instance, in my Voxer communities, if I've got people in a group, I'm never in Voxer on Wednesdays and I'm never in Voxer on the weekends. And I always show up at least twice a day, every other day. So Mondays, Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Fridays. So I think the biggest thing is communication first. And I mean, I'm saying it from the moment that they get in, they're getting an email about it. When they're, in the space, I'm going to talk about it on the first call. So those boundaries have to be something that you articulate from the start. And I will tell you again, majority of the time people will say, I've never heard anybody say so like securely what their boundaries are and then watch them honor it. You have taught me how to do that for myself, And so it's just communication. Know what you can bring to the table, share that, honor that, and then also remember human first always, as much as you possibly can. So yes, there are times when I'm like, hey, y'all, I'm traveling on this day. I'm not going to be popping in, but I will instead be in on a Saturday because I'm also just as equally going to show up exactly how I said. So if I'm going to be in 4 days a week and my life means that I have to leave one day, I'm going to make it up. You know what I mean? But it just comes down to I think the overarching thing that I would always say is human first. This is what I tell all my children all the time is, are you treating people the way that you wish to be treated? Apply that as an adult to everything that you do. Okay. I don't feel like a group container is better because somebody is always available. I think it's better when somebody is practicing what they preach, for one, when they're showing up vulnerably and raw, and when I know what to expect from them.
Absolutely. And it helps your students plan as well. They know you're not
Totally.
available on X day, so they need to
Yeah.
get organized if they want your thoughts beforehand. And again, people come to you for those boundaries. So I love
Yeah.
how you're giving them permission. This is safeguarding my boundaries, and I
Yep.
invite you to do the same.
Yeah.
It's totally okay. So
Yeah.
very,
Yeah.
very smart move. Let's talk about some structures
Mhm.
because structures, processes, I feel not only help your students, but also the facilitator here. So
Yeah.
do you have something in place that facilitates connection points and engagement without your involvement?
Yeah, yeah. So I think it is vitally important for whatever container that you're creating that you have both an onboarding and an offboarding process. So, dependent on what the particular container is, if it's like an ongoing membership or if it's a set 4 month group container, really looking at what kind of experience do I want these clients to have as they're coming in the door to feel fully supported. So, yes, that means email automation, making sure that they're getting the kind of communication that they need, that is clear and concise and forward thinking. But this also includes, I personally love to do a few extra things. So I love to do 90-day check-ins. So emails that come out that are just checking in, but they are also automated to send me that same email. So when I get that email and I can see who it's being sent to, I will then send a voice note to that person just to connect and check in on how they're doing and how things are going. Again, I'm going to be a broken record here, but think human first. The emails are coming from everybody, and that's amazing. And sometimes that's just perfectly enough, And also, be a human and connect with the human on the other side and love them through that, whatever that process is for them, and make sure that they feel really supported in whatever the container is. So I do that at the end of all of my, whatever it is I'm hosting. I've had memberships, I've had group programs and masterminds and retreats and all the things. So I've done kind of everything. So it's hard to pick one specifically, but I do also have an offboarding process. So that looks similarly, I'm connecting in sort of a voice mentality as well as email. And then I always personally offer closing calls. Again, some people will call this a little bit over and beyond, but I think over delivery is the actual key to retention. And so for me, that looks like, let's hop on a call, a 30-minute call just to connect and close this up with a bow. Part of that comes from being a therapist too, though. You never just said therapy's over, bye. We just went through all this intimacy. no, I want to connect with you. I want to make sure to close this in a way that feels safe for you, that you've processed whatever you need to process. And that's in regard to therapeutic offerings, but also business offerings. So it doesn't have to be like, oh, we've had this really intimate, whatever. Really, again, just consider the human first of it. So the automation of it is that these emails are coming out anyhow. The way that I've personalized it is that some of them come to me as well as kind of a reminder to just check in and make sure that they feel good.
Yeah. Clever. Again, just to prompt you because you know what's happening on the background. Sometimes automations are great, but if you're not knowing what's
Yeah.
happening to add those little touches, it just
Yep.
defeats the purpose almost.
Yeah.
And the
Totally.
wrap up call, as someone who is obsessed with audience insights and getting firsthand feedback from people, it's such a smart move to not only offer final a wrap up, but also to get that firsthand insight into their experience. I'm sure they're going to share with you what stood out for them, what really was most beneficial for them. So it's a perfect opportunity to gather that insight
Yeah.
to help
I
you make
will
that program
say,
better.
totally. I will say that I send an email that encourages them, invites them to fill out a form where they give their feedback. And upon filling that out, they unlock this closing call. Because one of the things that I really mindfully want to do, because it's been a negative experience for me, I'm not trying to steal more of your time. So just
Mm.
because you were in my container, I'm not then going to be like, well, now give me time to tell me more about how awesome I am and how awesome my group is. So yes, I want them to fill out this form. That's important feedback for me. But I really try to make the closing call about serving them. So I start this closing call as a reflection on them. So I just spend a few moments telling them how I see them, how I've witnessed them, what my experience has been like getting to know them. And it is it's almost the reverse of I'm not here for you to blow me up and make me feel really good. I'm here to make you feel really good. And I'm also here to offer any last minute support that you need. So sometimes it looks like actually I could really use some strategy for what I do here, or I'm really having this difficult time with managing my time, or I'm feeling really overwhelmed with my nervous system. And it might be like, great, let's do a quick breath work or let's do a quick meditation or whatever. So I will say that is one thing I try to do really different because I've been on the other end of somebody saying, let's get on a call. And then they're trying to sell me and or they're trying to
Yeah.
get a testimony from me. And it feels like, gosh, I've already given you X amount of money. Why is it
Yeah.
always
Yeah.
about
What
more for
next?
you?
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And so it's not about sales. And I always preface with that. Like, I'm not here to sell you anything. If you ever need more, you know where to find me. I'm literally just here to serve you. That's it.
Yeah. And again, human first, right? It's about the person.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
such a
Leave
nice
people
way
better
to,
off than when you found them. That's the goal.
yeah. It's like you're leaving them on a high. You're
Mm-hmm.
helping them
Mm-hmm.
reflect how far they've come, why they joined in the first place, and that journey they've gone on.
Sure.
Let's go to the opposite part of that journey. So after
Mm-hmm.
the wrap up call, let's look at that initial first group session in your
Yeah.
containers, whichever one you want to go with. But
Yeah.
are there any rituals or routines that you introduce? I know we've talked about boundaries, but any other
Mm-hmm.
things that you introduce in that first session to really set the tone for that experience that's ahead of them?
Yeah. Yeah. First and foremost, I'm always doing some sort of grounding or some sort of practice at the very beginning of all calls, but especially the first call to help give people a moment to transition to that call. You can only imagine, I mean, depending on who you're working with, but I'm traditionally working with people who wear many hats. So the likelihood that they just made a meal for their children, or, they just dropped their kids off at school, or they barely fit in that one shower, or they were just finishing up an email or hopped off a call, whatever. So I always mindfully take some time to help them get present and where they're at so they can be right where we are. And it doesn't feel like we're just jumping immediately into content or immediately into anything else. So that's first and foremost. On my first calls, it is my number one priority is to build community. So I always want to think about this is the groundwork that I lay to determine whether or not these women are going to know how to be reciprocal in what they give and what they receive, right? And also if they're going to feel safe enough where I am. So speaking again to the vulnerability first, I typically have some sort of, obviously dependent on the group, some sort of prompt, something that we're moving through at the beginning that's a little bit story focused. I go first though, right? So I'm going to go first with vulnerability, not perfection. That's the first thing. But one other thing I've always done is I actually encourage you're going to share this thing and then we're all going to share what we heard from you. So, what I'm inviting is for these women to learn what it looks like to be actively engaged in a call. Because how many times are people not on video? or not paying attention until it's their turn to talk, right? So I am telling them from the get, everybody has a job here. Everybody has a job. So when each person is talking, I need you to be paying attention so that you can share feedback and help her to see something that maybe she doesn't know that she has shared. So obviously this really depends on the prompt that I'm giving. But what's been so amazing and the feedback that I always get is that one, everybody gets off the call and they're just like, I've never felt more connected to people in my life. Like, I don't know how you did that. And it's because I'm actually teaching the pattern of truly tuning in, really listening, actually reflecting back to somebody. And then the person who has shared is getting to receive, right? In a really unique and genuine way that feels like life-giving, you know? And so they all do this. From then on, nobody half-asses my calls. Everybody comes just fully prepared to give and take in such a profound.
Yeah, I've never witnessed anything like your format. It's so beautiful because you get buy-in from people. Everyone's
Yes.
emotionally invested in everyone else's
Yes.
journey, and you also
Yep.
multiply what they're
Yeah.
getting from it because they're getting your
Yeah.
perspective and your thoughts, but also everyone else's, and that
Yeah.
beautiful melting pot of different perspectives and
Yep.
different angles and different, possibilities they can
Yep.
tap into.
Yeah.
So many ideas, so much inspiration for, how I could facilitate group spaces. Being,
Yeah.
being a therapist is such an advantage because you, you know all the techniques, human first, actually listening,
Yeah.
reflecting.
The
So,
funny
so much
story is I was
gold.
just telling my copywriter that I'm like, why did I pick this profession? Because sometimes it's really hard to find the right words to articulate the results that I
Mm.
provide because it's not as like, I'll help you with this automation or I'm going to help you make this much money because it's so different, but also if I'm going to toot my own horn, I think a little bit more profound than most of the work that people will
Mm.
have. But I will say, like, as you're like, what an advantage. I'm like, well, sometimes not. I'm like,
Yes.
how do I articulate what it is that I
Yes.
do sometimes?
It is hard, but other people's take on your work, on the
Totally.
work you do is awesome. And
Yeah.
I'm sure the word of mouth you would have around your business and your services would be amazing because it's such a unique container that people would tell their friend about and spread the word for you, even
Yeah.
if you can't put it in your own words. They'll do it for you. So here's a little selfish question again. So I mentioned I'm more introverted. We were chatting on the call before. I tend to be someone who doesn't necessarily take not center stage, but who doesn't necessarily put their hand up and participate as actively just because of my personality. Do you have any tips or advice for coaches, group space facilitators to help those quieter members
Mm,
of their group to be confident or more willing to put themselves out there without feeling
yeah.
pressured like they have to contribute just
Yeah.
because?
Sure. I would say, for one, it's really important to note that just because somebody is quiet doesn't mean they're disengaged. It likely means they're discerning. And so, for one, more often than not, people take quiet members as disengaged or unavailable, or, and it becomes more of an ego issue than anything else on part of the leader. They're more concerned about, like, I just want to hear from you. And so I think 50% of it for sure is just your ability to really trust that people are going to share when it feels safe for them to share. Yes, there's always invitation there to look at, like, how can I make it a little bit safer for somebody to share? But sometimes people are just more discerning and they respond differently and need that experience for itself. But I will say, more often than not, the quieter, more discerning people with time are much more often to participate in spaces that are regulated and safe. So, meaning you've dropped into the space in some way to begin with. You're not just running in and instantly, giving a bunch of information or whatever, but you've also ensured that you've set the tone for what's confidential, what will not be brought out of this space. Even just in saying, like, I can say all day, like, here's the negative parts, or here's things I've done wrong, or here's my failures, or whatever. That's going to make somebody feel safer for sure, because I've gone first, I've done that thing. But I will also always say, this is a space for you, built for you, secure for you, and it is 110% safe. So I do have people on the very first call talk about confidentiality, what they do or do not share. I think all these things set the tone. I'm not personally ever going to go out of my way to like call somebody out that's not speaking. I will trust their discernment. Like, for whatever reason, this is what feels good. I will, however, sometimes reach out personally in a very like, hey, I just want to check in. I noticed you don't say a lot in the group, which is absolutely okay. And that's a very important thing to say. Like, I want this to be whatever it is that you need it to be. But I also want to check in and make sure that there's not anything else that I could do to make it feel a little bit better for you to say more. But at the end of the day, like, if there's people in my spaces that don't want to speak and they just want to listen, great. That's lovely.
I have to say, I tend to be more engaged in spaces where the expectations were set at the beginning,
Yes.
where it feels okay to not be the perfect role
Yeah.
model, that perfect
Yes.
person who just knows it all, has all the answers. So before we wrap up, because I do love to make the episode super practical for the listeners, if there was one thing they could do today to start facilitating safe spaces, what would you recommend as a starting point?
I think, as corny as this sounds, I think the most important thing that you do is you really put yourself in the shoes of the people that you are holding space for. And I think that sometimes as entrepreneurs, we forget that part. It's about, how can I sell this? How can I get as many people in? Yes, we're thinking about the results, and these all come from good places. Nobody's coming from a negative place here. But really, to approach every container that you create through the lens of like, how can I make this the safest place for people to land? And that's whether or not you help build funnels or you're a copywriter or you're a therapist like me. It doesn't matter what it is that you do. You are a human creating a human brand that requires humans to have success. So consider the human in
Yeah.
everything that you do.
It sounds so logical, right? But I feel
Yeah.
often it's overlooked. There's a transaction and then all of a sudden people are numbers and they
Yeah.
just go through this
Yeah.
container
Kind of
and then
forget.
they are
Yeah.
offboarded because the money was handed over. The journey really just begins at the point of
Yeah.
purchase. 'Cause that's
Yeah.
where your impact
Yeah.
starts and where you can have the most impact on their journey.
Right. Well, in any way that you can personalize anything, like if somebody enrolls, get into their inbox with your voice, like, yes, they'll get the automatic email that says whatever, but like, if you can, send them a message, have it be you. I'm a little anti-bot in the world of ManyChat and all the things. I've always been like, you know what? I'm never going to be too good, too busy, or too big to not be the person responding in my DMs or to not be the person facilitating more conversations. And even to this day, I'd say the greatest, I'd say 80% of my business is built on retention and referrals, bar none. 80% of my business. I have clients I've worked with for 5 years that are like, I will never leave. You cannot ever let me leave. This is where I'm here to stay. And I'm so grateful for that. And a lot of it has to do, even to this day, with me being the kind of person who will immediately acknowledge the fact that like making an investment in somebody is a big deal. It's not small. Remember that. Remember every time you've made an investment and what that feels like, how vulnerable sometimes that feels, how scary sometimes that feels, and be the person who drops in and says, hey, I'm so thrilled that you're here. And I can't wait to make this the best experience that you've had. And do not be afraid to say, what's one thing I can do to make this experience even better than you could imagine? And then do it. It's not that hard.
It's not. And it sets the tone, right?
It does.
It just reinforces that the decision to invest in your program was
Yeah.
100% right. And
Yeah.
it sets the journey off on such a powerful trajectory.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
yeah,
Agreed.
awesome. I ask all my guests this one question. What's one thing that you've always been wondering about or you would like to know more about when it comes to the customer experience, customer retention? Who would you
Yeah.
love to answer it for you?
Yeah. Well, I saw this before we hopped on, and it's really a challenging question, to be honest with you. I was like, I don't know, really thinking through it. And I will say, Kathy Heller, are you familiar with Kathy Heller? I have really enjoyed the spaces that she has created when I have done her, like any calls she has. I haven't joined like a membership or anything, but I've been to a few different calls that she's done. And she has such a large, massive community, but it feels really intimate no matter how many people are there. So if I were to ask anybody or be able to connect with anybody, I would want to connect with her and learn a little bit more about that, because I think that if there's one sort of, I don't know if fear is the right word, but one thing I've considered sometimes is like, I have built some incredible containers and spaces, and a lot of them have been really intimate because I've always kind of felt like this is how I can make it really good at how I can give to the people the way I want to. And I think there's a part of me that's sometimes afraid, like, can I do this in a big capacity, and still make eye contact with every person and still, do the things that I want to do. And so I'd want to hear from her, like, how do you create the intimacy in spaces so large?
Awesome. Love the challenge. Let me see. I'll reach out to
Yeah.
her
Yes.
if I can get her.
Do that.
Awesome. This is challenge accepted. I'm sure people loved hearing from you. If they want to find out more about you, where can
Yeah.
they track you down online?
Yes. Well, I would say the best place is probably my podcast, which is Shamelessly Ambitious. And that's because I am on social media at this particular day, but I am coming upon my birthday in about a month and I'm leaving social media for a year. We talked about this a little bit before we got started,
Yes.
but both for myself and just what feels really good in this season of my life, but also because my kids are getting a little older and I know that social media is soon to come into their worlds, and I want to take a year to be an example for what it looks like to not have that be your entire existence. So I'm taking an entire year away from social media. So you can find me on Instagram at Ash McDonald, and I'll have stuff there whether or not I'm active or not. But then the podcast, and I'd love to give your audience my ultimate guide to over delivery, which is something that I created that gives you 25 psychology backed ways to delight your clients and make over delivery the standard of your business. So a lot of what I talked about today, as well as a mini training on particularly group spaces and what to do to start the conversation and to make intimacy number one in those kind of containers. Because it is, I do think, in a world that is so digital, we are forgetting the human first approach. And so I created this about a year ago, just knowing like we have to be better, we have to do it different.
I'm going to download this right after this recording. Well, thank you so much for coming on the show, Ash. This
Yeah.
was such a good conversation. Love the human first approach to basically anything in your business. So smart. And yeah, I can't wait to share it with the listeners.
Yeah.
So, listeners, if you have a burning customer experience question that you would love answered either by myself or an amazing guest like Ash, then you can submit your question via the link in the show notes anonymously, or if you want to have a little shout out on the episode, leave your details. And if you enjoyed this episode, please share it with anyone who could benefit from Ash's wisdom. Thanks for tuning in, and I will see you next week.